Okay.
Okay, I'd like to call the April 16th, 2026 Shoreline Fire Department Regional Authority Board of Commissioner meeting to order. Would you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to read into the minutes that Commissioner Sullivan has an excused absence tonight. Do we have any public comment? No, not virtual, none here. Moving on, consideration of the agenda, Chief.
I'd like to add one item under new business, and that just call it PEMB retirement dates. PEMB, post-employment medical benefits. Excuse me, program retirement dates.
Approval of the past minutes for April 2nd. Do we have any changes to the minutes? Additions, subtractions? Hearing none, I declare the minutes for April 2nd, 2026 approved as presented. Excuse me. Let's move on to correspondence. Anything, Chief?
Don't believe so. No, thank you.
There's nothing in our packet. Approval of the standing agenda. Warrants, motion to approve.
I'll move to approve disbursements in the amount of $1,228,692.47.
I'll second.
It's been motioned by Commissioner Hevlin and seconded by Commissioner Webster. Any changes or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, perfect. Passes unanimously. Commissioners report. Does anybody have anything at the table to report? No? Eric? Anybody virtual have anything, Commissioner report? We don't want to hear about your vacation, Lisa. Okay, moving on. No financial statistics, strategic activity. How about RFA district activity report? We have Keith Helms. Anything? Yes, I'm viewing the public records requests. You're getting a little out of hand again.
I can stop
No,
seeing you.
no,
Okay.
no. It just proves our point.
Yeah, no, I just want you to be
Yeah.
aware that's.
At some point in time, I'm gonna take all these stacks of papers and. Yeah,
Don't say it out loud.
and. Okay. Anything for Chief Cowan? Okay, we are setting a record here tonight.
Slow down here.
All right, old business. Bothell.
Okay, so a little bit of an update. Let's see. So last week I had a meeting with the finance director, and his name's Quan, and 3 of the Bothell City finance people, plus a third-party financial consulting group that was doing an evaluation of the analysis that I provided, including the fire benefit charge discussion and so forth. It was a good meeting. They asked a bunch of questions. It's no offense to them because it is not in their wheelhouse, but the fire benefit charge it's a new concept for them. So they had a lot of questions regarding the fire benefit charge, which of course I won't bore you guys with because you're familiar. Ultimately, I'm not trying to brag or anything. I think that because they said it, the financial group, said they were pretty impressed with the analysis but they needed to dive into it and take it, and spend some time in due diligence, which they said it was going to take a couple days, and it did. It took a couple days. They came back, I just got the analysis yesterday. And I have some questions about it because they did some misconstruing of the fire preventive charge and the impacts and all that. It still looked okay. I've shared with you the analysis that I provided. I'm going to follow up next week with Quan to talk more about any questions that they have and so forth, so that everybody can feel good about what the numbers show. But the numbers show that even with their analysis, they looked at the average impact of fire benefit charge, not per like single family, multifamily, commercial properties. And so the in their analysis, the impacts were it was going to cost some more, not huge, but more for everybody. But then by the sixth year, then they did an extended analysis, but by the fifth or sixth year, then it was a savings and all that. My argument is that for single family residents, they'll immediately have savings. Multifamily and commercial will be paying more, but single family would have a savings. So how we frame that, and they provided 4 different scenarios. And again, due diligence, they were looking at all sorts of different scenarios that I don't think are realistic. There's really only one scenario that I feel is realistic, which is for us to for the city to lower their property tax rate and for us to not be at 70 cents and for us to lower our property tax levy rate. They did some scenarios of us keeping it at 70 cents and they kept theirs at the high without decreasing. And I'm like, well, it's not realistic because that's just gouging, in my opinion. So I think we're getting closer with having even the third party give some credence to and defendability to the analysis and all that, which is good. So fast forward to this week or to the end of last week, I had a meeting again with Quan and the city manager to talk about what our next steps were and timelines and all that. Because I've been trying to push for an August ballot measure so that we would have full authority January 1st of next year. He in the meeting on Friday, in the meeting on Friday, I imparted on him the importance of having that authority. And he goes, okay, I will have another conversation with the council members and get back to you by Monday evening, Tuesday morning. He had that conversation. So that was Friday, Monday morning. He had that conversation, and the feedback he got is they're all in supportive of the joining the RFA, but not August. So they're pushing for November is at this point. And to that point, I guess to be redundant, to that point, he wants to set up a timeline. So we started talking about timelines and would like, and this is for the board to decide, he would like the council and the board to get together in a joint session, either the full boards, more preferably probably the full boards, or delegates thereof of the board if you don't want to have the full board, meet. And we threw out a date, and I said Thursdays are better because that's typically we're either doing first and third. I said so. We looked at I think it was May 14th. It's the second Thursday. Yeah, second Thursday of May as a tentative date that I told him I would bring to you to see if that worked for y'all to meet with the council. And then if that is, I think the preference is full board and full council. But if you, which would create quorums for both groups, if you prefer to have 4 board and 3 council members, that would be fine too, to avoid a quorum. But I think he'd prefer you guys all to start getting together and developing relationships, which is what we had talked about before, but we were thinking that would be after they had committed to a resolution. I think that was also when I was thinking it was a more compressed timeline. But so I told him, I said, this is something that my board has talked about in the past, but I would bring it to you guys for consideration. And then I could talk about the next steps after that. What do you guys think?
What do we hope to accomplish on May 14th?
Good question. So going through some of the questions that I've shared with you all that we need to take positions on. Some of these are financial, some of them are other things, like the governance, which we've already talked about. Some of the like collecting the EMS money from Snohomish County, things like that. There are about 3 or 4 big questions that we need to answer. And I can go through some of these questions if you'd like. We've talked about them in the past, and I've shared this document with y'all. But at some point, we're going to need to take a position. I prefer to take a position and present that to the council, as opposed to just letting it free for all, so that we're efficient and not spinning our wheels in ways that isn't productive.
I agree.
So, and we can talk about these questions as well. I can do that right now if you like. And again, you have this document. It hasn't changed since the last time I sent it to you. But the first question is, what happens to the City of Bothell Public Safety Levy if Bothell joins the RFA? This is a public safety levy that was ran about 4 years ago, I believe. It ends in 2031. So probably it's 2021.
That's the one that's supposed to up their staffing.
Yes, that's the one. And it's police too. It's not just fire. In fact, the predominance is on the police side.
We'll have to figure out their percentage that would go towards firefighters.
Right. And so
one question do they need from us is how that would work with the RFA.
Well, so my position on this is that right now it's funding 10 firefighters and it runs out till 2031. So this is my suggestion. Please don't take this as I'm speaking for the board, but this is my suggested position, which is that they continue to run that. Well, the levy is going to run regardless of when they join, if they join the RFA or not, but they commit to committing the equivalent of 10 firefighters until the end of that levy. And then after that, they can do whatever they want, and then by then we'll be acclimated and we can absorb, the potential costs and so forth. So that, whatever 10 firefighters cost is what they would carve out and transfer to the RFA.
That would go up every year as salaries go up, right?
Correct. Okay. And they have a whole forecast of like where that levy rate goes, depending on where the AV goes and stuff too. But, again, so we would need to, confirm that position and then get language that specifies that. What happens to the City of Bothell Public Safety Capital Bond, which is the bond that paid for, well, it did other things besides Station 42 and 45, but that was for the fire department, at least that's what it paid for. That's a bond, it's a debt. They get to continue paying that for another 20 years.
Same way as.
Just same as the UPPO with North Shore. So, how does Bothell currently collect EMS levy funds and what is the applicable levy rate? So in Snohomish County, there's 2 different things here. They have the Snohomish County side of Bothell, and then there's Snohomish County Fire District 10, which has got those 2 little pieces of fire district. In the Bothell city limits, Bothell formed a urban EMS district, the Bothell Urban EMS District. They collect EMS funds in Snohomish County and then transfer those funds to us. Snohomish County 10 does something very similar. They collect money as a fire district and then transfer those funds. So we would, for the Bothell portion, we would keep that district in place until it ran out, which is going to be coinciding with the end of. They both, by the way, they follow the same levy rate and path that King County EMS taxes and all that. It's similar rates and all that, and they mimic Snow 10 and Bothell mimic each other with their rates. So there's equalization of rate, and it's similar to the King County process, and it runs out at the same time.
Are the Snow 10 commissioners decision makers that we need to loop into this process?
Put a pin in that one, and I'll come back to that one because
Discuss that.
because that's a good question, and I've got some more updates on that too.
Okay.
So, in fact, I'll put Snow 10 here. Okay. So my position or suggested position would be for Bothell, their urban EMS levy, to continue collecting it and transfer the money to the RFA, just like they do now, except it would be to the RFA. So, does Bothell currently have service contracts or payment agreements for tax exempt properties? Not many, or not that I know of, but I'm still kind of exploring what that looks like. I don't think they have. They certainly don't. They certainly don't have as many as we do, for contract development. So, but regardless, if they do have those contracts, then we would have to have those transferred to the RFA, or if we found some that we wanted to develop contracts with, we would pursue that. The RFA maintains a reserve fund equal to approximately 15% of annual operating expenses. What financial contribution would be required from Bothell to maintain the RFA's reserve policy post RFA? This one's a more difficult one. We have since I got here, so 13 years, we have continued to increase our reserve fund, which we had almost non-existent when I got here, to a level that's 15%. They only maintain about a 7 or 8% reserve fund in the city of Bothell. So one of the things that to smooth this and to ease into this a little bit, it would be to have them transfer that 7 or 8% of whatever the Bothell Fire Department costs are. So that would be, theoretically, what if they have their reserve fund, that would be the slice of pie that would be, equivalent to what they're maintaining for the Bothell Fire Department. That would lower our 15% rate, rate, I don't know, down to 12% or 10%. I don't know what I'd have to do the calculation. I haven't done it yet. We need to recognize too that there might be things like this that we should be trying to ease into it, because if you looked at the financial analysis, our taxpayers are going to be saving a huge amount of money on their tax rate, and we could build back into that, creeping back up and building back into a 15%. If 15% was our mark, the industry standard is about 7%. We exceed that because we wanted more safety net, but it also gives us a better rating on our bonds when we go out to bonds. And actually, North Shore was really good about this. Maintaining anything over 10%, gives you that high rating, for you when you do your bond ratings. 15% is double what the industry standard is, and you still don't even get dinged hard at 7%. If you're less than 7% or less than 5%, I think that's when you really start getting dinged. But it's something for you guys to consider, because that's probably them coming up with a bunch of money to come in would probably be a difficult thing. But our taxpayers, it's a way of transferring some of the initial upfront, money of transfer to the savings that we're going to get, for our taxpayers. That would be long term too.
I think that's a good idea, because I've seen this come around before when there was a potential discussion of Bothell, and at that time it was with Woodville or Short, and this whole reserve discussion thing of basically Bothell can't put in enough was kind of a deal killer at that time. So I would support doing what you're talking about.
And it's my next item, I think. The other thing that killed it was also because their stations were so out of date and in a bad shape.
Yeah.
That's not an issue anymore, but that was part of that conversation too.
Their equipment is updated too.
Their equipment and apparatus and stations are all in good shape. So
if we lower the funds, what is that going to do to our bond or
our rating?
yeah, thank you.
Yeah. As long as we didn't lower below 7%, which it would still probably be double digits. It would, if they came in with like 7% and we're at 15% now, I can do the math, and I can do that tomorrow, and I can send you kind of an estimate, if you will. It would probably be in that 10 to 12% range, which is still exceeding, the minimum, the target of 7%. I believe that'd be a good question for a bond counsel to take a look at. I still believe we will qualify at a high rate, and with everything else we've done, I'll bet we improve our overall bond rate from 10 years ago when we sold the last one. We were a AA-. Don't quote me. I want to say it was a AA-, and we could have been. North Shore was like a AA+.
Plus.
And I would like to get to that AA+, but that's it. I'll put that as a question.
Would you?
Yeah.
Let's do a little research on
Bond.
That does make a
Rating.
difference on.
it does.
So I will figure out what the percentage is. Roughly looking at what it is. Okay. This gets to the capital. The RFA maintains a funding model designed to support apparatus and equipment replacement on a rolling 20-year basis. what initial capital contribution would be required from Bothell to align with this model? This gets back to this quote unquote seed money that we've talked about. Again, they've got good equipment, apparatus, and stations, and Snow 10 is going through a major remodel on their station. So I feel pretty good about all their capital assets. But we would still want some money as seed money, so it doesn't detriment, it's not a big detriment to our replacement program. I have not done the numbers on this. It's probably $750,000, $1 million. I would have to do the numbers, and plug it into our model, which I can do.
Do they have a program together?
They do have a program and they do have some money set aside, but the complication here is they do everything.
Together.
The city does everything in one bucket.
Yeah.
All their reserve for the entire city is one bucket. Their capital replacement is all their capital replacement. So I said, there was two things that I asked for from Quan. I said, tell me how much in reserve you have dedicated to the fire department, the rainy day, and how much money have you set aside for your capital asset replacement program. And whatever you've got set aside is probably good enough if you transfer that money in, but I need to do an analysis, and so it's not carte blanche to, for them just to, but I need to do it's probably $750,000, $1 million, some maybe more than $1 million. I don't know, somewhere in that neighborhood. Will Bothell retain responsibility for their left one retirees? They balked at this a little bit. Rightfully so, because they're like, yeah, that's expensive. I'm like, yep, it is. And if you ask us to take it on, it's going to be expensive. I said, I don't, how many do you have? And they weren't sure. They thought it was like 4 or 5. I said, that's probably $1.5 million, ish. I said, we will plug that into the GASB 75 formula that we use to assess our liability on this. And whatever that number is, that would be what we would require.
They have left one for the police department too.
I would assume that they do, but we're only talking about fire.
Right.
And it's not a ton of people, but I have been very much encouraging them to hold on to their left one liabilities. I don't want them. Yeah, and even if they transferred a bunch of money, I still don't want them. I'd rather us to continue to get that number to dwindle. Not that it's a good way of dwindling, but it's
because it's an unpredictable liability.
It's a very much an unpredictable liability, and it becomes potentially very expensive. So we have to budget for that. And we do it and I think you guys are familiar. We do a 3-year fully funding all of our liabilities for all of them at the same time, knowing that that's very, very, very unlikely to happen, where all of them are out at the same time for all 3 years. And I'm talking about assisted nursing. That's where the real cost is on this, which can be anywhere from 10 to 15,000 a month. And so that's why we have to. So we have a budget.
So we have a very conservative model.
I think we have an appropriate model. Some organizations go more than that. I think going less starts to become a little bit more risky. I mean, we can drop to a year or two, but 3 years, I felt like it was probably a little conservative, but probably a pretty good approach. Because the reality is if we say, oh, we're going to fund it for 5 years or 10 years. Okay, now instead of, $2 million in our reserve or whatever, now we need 5 or 10. So now that's money that we're getting from our taxpayers. Is it really appropriate to have that much money tied up on this possibility? Is it really defendable and appropriate, really, is what it comes down to. So it is a risk. I mean, I'm sharing with you what our model is, which is 3 years, all of them, in assisted or nursing facilities.
But that's also why we have other reserve funds.
That is true. And here's the thing. If all of them went in today and a year from now they're still in it, guess what? We would be making some hard choices about our budgeting and so forth, looking 3 years out, knowing that, okay, crap, this is, sorry about my language, but I mean, oh, wow, this is getting really bad. We need to make adjustments to our expectations 3 years from now, if that was the case. So we would buy us enough time too, to see what we need to do to be prepared for it. Either pulling from other reserves or changing our budget, increasing our tax rate or whatever we needed to do to make sure that we stay viable.
It seems like we're in a good spot.
I think we're in a good spot. How will accrued vacation and sick leave liabilities for employees transferring to the RFA be handled? In retrospect, and I think Rick, you might have been questioning me on this. In retrospect, I don't know if we did right by North Shore in requiring, because what we asked for was dollar for dollar on vacation and half on sick leave hours, that their accrued rate. In retrospect, I mean, everything ended up together, but so one of the things that I would propose is instead of asking for that transfer, that they commit to, say, 5 years. Anybody that retires, this might have been your suggestion too, that anybody that retires out legacy Bothell in the 5 years after they come into the RFA, they pay for whatever that equivalent is. And that way it gives us time for them to either use those accrued hours, or we get to a point where, again, where we've acclimated to those impacts. I think the money transfer for North Shore was 400,000 or 500,000, maybe 700,000. I can't remember how much it was. Bothell would probably would be more than that because they're bigger. Maybe it's $1 million, but it's not necessarily an automatic liability for us unless they retire out immediately. And if that was the case, then they would pay for that. And so that I think that would remove my concern about the liability of it. So
And what you're suggesting would also let them not have to pay it up front. They could pay for it as it comes
and they
up.
could pull it out of that big bank of money that they have, in the city if it came due.
Suggestion was
So, and the other argument there too is that they might be using that vacation and sick leave and all that, and we build into our plan too that as people get to their retirement ages, we start to look at those things and put the money aside into our benefits fund. So, how will capital assets be addressed? At one point, they were asking whether or not they needed to transfer the facilities. I said yes. That's a line in the sand for me, I guess. They need to transfer all. I'm not going to maintain, equipment, apparatus, facilities without having control over that. Now we did North Shore. We didn't do that initially, but that was because it was under the full services ILA. Once we did the RFA, obviously all the assets transferred. So that I think that's for me. That's, unless you talk me off the ledge, that's a line in the sand for me. Governance, how would the RFA governing board be structured following Bothell's annexation? We've discussed that, up to 3 council members. What cost model will be used to evaluate financial impacts on Bothell? This gets back to how do we compare those, what I was just talking about earlier about impacts. How do we compare that? What do we compare to? Do we compare right now, before and after? Right now, the fire department over there is very lean. They're paying for a part-time fire chief. They've got 2 admin positions that are not filled. They've got a bunch of positions in the city that aren't on the fire department payroll, not on the fire department budget, like positions in IT, finance, HR, admin, facilities, things like that. So how do you compare? If we're really going to outreach and message this and educate and inform, how do we compare that apples to apples and say, and that's up to them to really kind of to decide. I have told them I think that they should be looking at it with at least a fully funded standalone fire department. If they want to wrap in the city positions, I think they should. It's just my opinion, but this is really on Bothell to figure out how they want to do the comparison. And that was built into my analysis. I added like $600,000, I think, back into for staffing. So
you're saying compared to what they have just explicitly budgeted for their fire department operating budget?
Correct. I mean, because right now it's lean. It's less than a real true assessment of those costs, because they're paying for a part-time fire chief and they've got positions that are not filled and so forth. So I think if you're really trying to do as good a apples to apples comparison, you would need to put those positions back in. A fully funded fire chief, a fully funded admin staff, things that we're doing, like a day shift BC, potentially.
So they're trying to compare their cost if they don't join versus if they do join.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's probably the best way to say it is like, we're at a bifurcation in the paths here. Like, are you guys going standalone or are you joining the RFA? If you go standalone, this is what it's going to cost. And that means fully funded, separate from what we're doing now. Right now, we're in this limbo spot. So that's how I believe that they should be looking at it. So, and then the follow-up question to that is based on that selected cost model, where are the projected impacts to the taxpayers? As I shared earlier, if you look at the way I've done it, the single family residence has savings right now with the budget that we've got. So 7.5 cents per thousand savings for a single family residence, 26.9 cents increase for multifamily, and 57 cents. 57 cents, I think, increase for commercial. No, I'm sorry, more than that, 79 cents, 79.3 cents. So commercial and multifamily are paying quite a bit more, which isn't that surprising considering the riskier structures that we go on month or daily, weekly, monthly, et cetera. And you all know that the fire benefit charge weighs quite a bit heavier on the riskier structures, which is, in my opinion, defendable and appropriate. So
that's implementing our exact model in
Correct.
a jurisdiction.
I had Neil take all the properties and plug it into our existing model with a number that I gave him to balance the budget, on the fire benefit charge side. So I said basically lower our levy rate to 39.1 cents from 70. It's now at 70. Lower it to 39.1 cents and raise $17 million in fire benefit charge, which is the equivalent of 29.2 cents average 29.2.
Why lower the levy?
Just because we need to lower. Now we could tweak this a bit and not lower the property. And this is where we can finesse this once we have a commitment to move forward and we really want to fine tune what our rates are. We're at 70 cents. We can lower it to whatever we want. We can't raise it. We can raise it 1%. The levy rate can only go 1% revenue growth. So with AV growth, that 70 cents is going to drop anyway, but we can set that wherever we want. And we can set the fire benefit charge for whatever we want to collect from the fire benefit charge. But where we want to be careful is what we don't want to do is have I'm just gonna make up numbers. We don't want a 20 cent per thousand property tax rate and a 40 cent per thousand fire benefit charge, because that's right at that, that's getting towards that 60% threshold. You want it to be, and we ran into this in North Shore too, why we had to run the fire benefit charge reauthorization. So you want to find a decent balance that doesn't set us up to have to reauthorize the fire benefit charge 3 years from now. You want to look at least 10, 15 years out. So yeah.
So right now for the shoreline RFA, we're at 70 cents per thousand on the levy.
And 35 cents equivalent on the fire benefit charge.
Okay. So I'm trying to just make sure I understand this. So how come we're talking about lowering it? Is because the addition of Bothell, the economies makes it so that it works out? Or why are we lowering why aren't we just doing the exact same thing in Bothell as we're doing here?
Yeah, because we're at the equivalent of $1.05, and we only need the equivalent of 68 cents.
Because of the addition of
Let's put it this way: we could zero our fire benefit charge and still collect more money than we need to on the property tax at 70 cents.
That's with the addition of Bothell.
Yes.
That's the effective addition of Bothell.
Because
Yes.
they're
So I guess what I'm thinking would be, we might want to consider doing something not quite such a change, just because I guess we just got to look at the impacts to all the different groups. But I'm just thinking,
Right.
If we're putting such a significant increase on the business, the commercial properties, that
Right.
could be unappealing to the business property owners in Bothell, who could be vocal about that.
Yeah.
Not to
And
mention
that's
the fact that it's, it's a big
Well,
issue.
and that's what I was talking about
And
with
multifamily as well.
the finessing. That's what I was talking about with the finessing. We can finesse this, and after I ran the numbers and I came back with what we've got. Again, I'm just going to throw this out there. This is just an idea. If we were to tweak these numbers so that single family residence was, say, neutral, not 7.5 cents of savings, and neutral. To do that, the best way because I've got the same concern. The best way to do that to create relief for the multifamily and commercial would be to increase the property tax rate and decrease the fire benefit charge, which also helps us with the 60% rule. Because the fire benefit charge weighs heavier on the multifamily and commercial. So if we decrease the amount of money that we want to collect on the fire benefit charge, that will create more impact to our single family residents, less to the or to the multi and the commercials. So if we use the same overall numbers but tweak the percentages, it would put more weight on the single family residents, because if we increase the property tax, that is more that shifts some of that weight. And we could tweak it until we got to, if that's what our goal was. And that's when I say finesse, I need input from y'all of like where do we want our single family? We want savings for the single family, or do we want neutral? Do you want them to increase and multifamilies to not increase by much? I mean,
Well, so I have a question. So you're talking about 7.5 cents, but you're also talking about going from 70 cents to 39 cents, which is more than 7.5 cents. Where's the 7.5 cents come from?
so okay, so that's so when you look at, you guys have this too, I've sent it, but if you look at, say, like the single family residence, and you know what, if I punch in all the numbers, and these are the impacts of the fire benefit charge of raising 70 or 17 million, we need the equivalent of 21 cents per thousand for single family, 56.5, and $1.07, for the or for commercial. That's what we need to raise on the fire benefit charge. That's the equivalent rates for the fire benefit charge to raise that 17 million in our formula, in our model. So remember, everything is in our model. The only thing that differs is how much money we want to collect. Do we want 15 million, 17 million, 20 million, 10 million? Whatever number we choose to put in there will spit out what these impacts look like. So
Okay, I understand that part, and I agree with I kind of go along with Eric that we, the 7.5 cent savings for the residential, I would prefer to zero that.
yeah, I mean,
Because they're not gonna feel it, it's gonna be the same cost to them.
Right.
Whereas we make it more appealing to the commercial properties and multifamily, which.
and mind you too, that this includes a couple other things, like the impact of building a new fire station if they don't go with us in the RFA and they have to run their own capital bond. It includes like $600,000 of increased costs in their staffing. And so I'm rolling a couple other things in here, that there's some assumptions there too. But this gets back to a philosophical question that both the board and the council really need to land on, of like, what is the target impacts of single, multi, and commercial? Because I think we can all, maybe we're all in agreement, maybe we're close to agreement of like, maybe it'd be nice to just be a little bit of savings for a single family, a penny, like a 1 cent decrease, and minimize the impacts on our multifamily and commercial. Or maybe we're okay saying single family at 7.5 cents of savings, that's really great for our single family, and we don't care. I'm not saying we do this, I'm just talking. We don't care about multi and commercial.
Well, I think the
Yeah,
plus of
so
being able to
Somewhere in between there, probably.
the plus of being able to yield some savings for single family is that those are most of the voters. And so,
Yeah.
it would also be appealing to them to know that, hey, maybe we're saving a little bit of money, even if it's not a lot of money.
I agree.
But I also think the other thing to consider is that the net effect on the people who live in Bothell is also going to be determined. It's going to be determined by what we say that you have to provide, but it's also going to be determined by how much Bothell chooses to adjust their rates. And so,
Yes.
if they don't give back the same equivalent of what we're collecting, then the net effect for people in Bothell is their taxes will go up.
Correct. They have to take they have to make a decision for the city to lower their property tax rate commensurate with what how the RFA is going to impact them, if we're going to be neutral.
Right.
It has to be exactly the same amount, so if we're the equivalent of 40 cents, then they need to drop 40 cents. Otherwise it's not gonna pencil out. So you're absolutely right. And I wasn't joking. I think it would be kind of nice to say that we're going to, on average, save single family residents, even if it's only a penny, and then soften the blow for, if it was me, that's what I would propose, and soften the blow for the multifamily and commercial by increasing our property tax rate and decreasing the amount of money that we want to collect in our fire benefit charge. Because that will do what I just said, and it'll give us a little bit more delay on hitting our 60% threshold with the fire benefit charge if it's a smaller percentage of our overall budget.
And when we get 2 or 3 years into the RFA, we'll be able to adjust.
Yeah. Well, just like everything else, as our costs go up by 5% a year, whatever it is, that 1% is absorbed in the property tax, so the rest is the fire benefit charge. So over time, it does this
It's like
until it hits, like North Shore,
60%.
it hits that 60% threshold, and then we reauthorize and reset, and then it'll do this again. And depending on how our cost increases go up and how the AB goes, is what drives how fast we get out of balance. So, and I've got a spreadsheet that actually projects out if you put 5% AB growth and 5% expense growth, and then you can play with those numbers and it'll extrapolate out with some very generic assumptions when we're going to hit that 60% threshold. Sorry, this is kind of, are you guys all sticking with me on this?
Oh, yeah, I'm on it.
No.
Good question.
It's not a dumb question. No, I'm going through this pretty quick, and some of this is pretty
So,
complicated.
The fire benefit charge needs to be set at the same rate for all three areas.
Correct.
The levy rate for North Shore and Shoreline are set at the same rate, but Bothell doesn't have to set their levy rate at the same rate.
The city of Bothell needs to adjust their property tax rate. But when Bothell joins the RFA will assess their property tax across Shoreline, Lake Forest Park, Kenmore, Bothell, and Snow 10 equally, all the way across the whole place.
Right.
But the city also has a property tax that they get to control. They collect that money and whatever. So that rate needs to decrease. Otherwise, it will be a very big or a very big increase. Gouge is not a good word.
Yeah.
It would be a very big increase to the taxpayers in Bothell if they don't decrease their city. And that's where I needed to sorry, thanks for asking the question, because I need to specify the city property tax rate. I'll just make it easy. Let's say they're at $1 and we're at 50 cents and they keep it at $1. And we are adding now in 50 cents. Well, the taxpayers will feel a 50 cent per thousand increase unless they drop it to 50 cents. And now they were $1 before. And now between both the city and the RFA, we're at $1. That would be neutral.
So is the city in agreement to doing this?
This is what we got to.
Well, they give it up. They're
Yeah.
no longer paying all the expenses of the fire service.
Not only is it up to the city, but this gets back to the messaging too. Like, for example, let's just say they don't. Let's say they're at $1 and we're at 50 cents and they're like, no, we want to still collect $1. Okay. We all have a big problem because our taxpayers in Bothell are going to feel a 50 cent per thousand increase. So how do you message that? Now, maybe that is that. I'm not saying that we're going to go there, but I'm just hypothetical. Let's say that was what was needed to maintain all the services in the city of Bothell because they were in dire straits. They're not in dire straits like that, but let's just say they were. They need to get up. We all need to get up and say, this is what we need to do. It is an increase. This is why. Please still vote yes. As opposed to, we think it's going to be neutral or a little bit of savings for single family residents, but it is going to be an increase in multi, it's going to be an increase on commercial. Please vote yes. There's a big difference in those messages. And the message needs to be transparent and honest and clear to those taxpayers so that nobody has sticker shock a year or two down the road and gets all fired up about at the city. Now, if they're at the city, because the city in the year 2 or 3 or 4 starts increasing their tax rate, that's on the city. I want to start at a good place where we can communicate exactly what we believe the impacts will be. And then after that, it's on us to manage our budgets just like we do normally. And we have a proven track record there. I believe. So, okay. Good question though. I'm sorry I wasn't more clear with that property tax rate.
Answered my question.
How will the service levels, response time, staff, and pre-station coverage compare before and after the RFA? mostly the same in the short term. Over time, it'll improve as we build in better staffing for units and or big increase when the new stations come online for both Shoreline or not both for Shoreline, Kenmore, and Bothell, depending on where we build the station in Bothell. I would like to cheat it down to the southwest corner so it can take care of our Kenmore residents too. The difference is 500 calls in South Kenmore versus 1,500 calls in South Bothell. So there's about 2,000 calls a year south of the slough that especially the North Shore commissioners, we were in quite the interesting challenge when we were talking about, taking down Station 54. And people were a bit fired up about what we were doing in the south side of Kenmore. It's 500 calls. It's hard to justify a new station for 500 calls. However, in the RFA with 1,500 calls in South Bothell, now there's 2,000 calls. Maybe not all of them can be served by one station. We'll still have 51 and 42 coming south of the slough, but maybe a predominance of those calls are covered. And now we're improving levels of service both for Kenmore and Bothell.
Well, yeah, because depending on where you cite that thing.
Yeah, hopefully in the southwest corner towards Simons Road somehow. But
By more high school.
we'll have to do a location analysis.
Yeah.
Figure that out. So, and then the last question: how will cross-county service delivery, King and Snohomish counties, be managed operationally and contractually? This is a good segue into the Snow 10 conversation. It's about the same as what we're doing now, assuming.
Can you repeat the question?
How will cross-county service delivery, King and Snohomish counties, be managed operationally and contractually? So right now, Snow 10 is under contract with Bothell to provide services to the Snow 10 area, which is two little pieces. One's to the northwest of Bothell and one's almost directly north, a little east of Canyon Park. So
just a little history.
There's
Bothell annexed most of Snow 10. All of that Snohomish County part was Snow 10, but Bothell annexed most of it, but not all, which left these two little islands.
correct. And to put some context to it, the Bothell, for example, the Bothell AV is about 20 billion. The Snow 10 AV is about 2 billion. So about a tenth, or if you do 2 out of 22, I mean, you're talking about 11, whatever. Or not 11, 9. But Snow 10 contracts with Bothell currently to provide all services. They pay Bothell for that. Snow 10 has 3 commissioners, no employees, and they really manage it. It's similar to what North Shore did, but even in a worse situation of like they don't have really a whole lot of control. They have a Snow 10 fire station in the city of Bothell. It's not in Snow 10 anymore because Eric's absolutely correct in that they had a much bigger fire district, but Bothell has annexed more of that area. But it's left with a fire station that Snow 10 owns, but it's in the city of Bothell. Still with me? I know it's kind of because where the station was, it used to be in Snow 10, but then but Bothell absorbed beyond that fire station.
So what?
And so
RFA, do we take over that station?
Okay, so we would, and I need to pursue what this legally looks like, but what I'm told by the Snow 10 commissioners, because they employ Brensner as well, is that we would have an obligation to continue serving the Snow 10 area if Bothell was to join, because vis-a-vis the contract with Bothell is now a contract with RFA.
Right.
I need to pursue, and I believe not only is it the right thing to do, but I need to look at the legal, I don't know, requirements of what that looks like, and we would probably need to enter into a new contract, I would guess, with Snow 10.
Is it an option that Snow 10 is part of the RFA as opposed to a contract for service with the RFA?
Okay, so let's go there because now we're getting back to your pin. Okay, so where is Snow 10 on this? Because they are a different organization that it's not just Bothell, it's Snow 10 as well if they want to join the RFA. So. I had a meeting with them, was it really just last night? No, it's 2 nights ago. So at the board meeting 2 nights ago, they've been talking about this for the last year and a half, and they've been telling me that they wanted to join even. Not here that okay. They wanted to join the RFA. I don't necessarily want Bothell to, be too excited about this, but they wanted to join the RFA a year and a half ago. I told them, no, 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 no. Hold on. Let's be aligned. Let's be concurrent with what we're trying to do. Because I really didn't want Bothell to, because Bothell would immediately look at that as like, because I'm the fire chief there too, I'm just making them massage this to put more pressure on Bothell. And I don't want that. I want us to be collaborative partners on this and to be aligned in working together on the timing on this. So a couple of nights ago, I said, hey, looks like Bothell's going to go in November. They're considering what their options are as to what their timing is, if they go in November as well, or if they wait until April of next year. I'm hoping that they decide to go in November and be concurrent with our Bothell efforts, because then our messaging and outreach to the communities can be to all the voters at the same time, as opposed to two separate, voting ballot measures. So where Snow 10 does not have to go at the same time, it would be easier to go at the same time. Where it becomes a little more complicated is if Bothell goes, and let's say Bothell votes, let's say they both are on November, and Bothell says yes, and Snow 10 says no. Their voters say no. That becomes a real problem for Snow 10, because they're not viable on their own. They need to be with somebody. They have recognized that. They want to be with our RFA at least a year and a half ago. Even 2 nights ago, they want to join our RFA. They just don't know about the timing yet. They're just trying to figure out what that timing looks like. So, but ultimately it's up to the Bothell voters and the Snow 10 voters, not the Bothell Council or the Snow 10 board. The voters will have to vote 50% plus one. So if Bothell says yes and Snow 10 says no, then we would have to figure out what that contract looks like with them, or they go someplace else. They can go to Snohomish County. They can do, something different potentially, but they're not viable on their own. So let's flip that. Bothell says no. Snow 10 says yes. Bothell is viable on their own they would become a 2-station fire department. Unless they bought the Snow 10 fire station, they become a 2-station fire department, and they would lose about $3 million worth of revenue to manage the Bothell Fire Department. And we would have this is why it gets complicated. We would have
this jurisdiction. We'd have an island.
We would have these 2 little islands that we would be serving, which makes not much sense. The Bothell would lose $3 million of revenue. And what do they do with those? Would they just absorb that cost, or would they say we need to cut costs? We need to cut firefighters out. We're not going to staff that Snow 10 station anymore. So does that put them on us? Now do we? It gets pretty complicated. It's not complicated for us necessarily. It's complicated for them.
Maybe the sequencing makes more sense that Snow 10 maintains a contract with either
and does it later.
Bothell. If Bothell says no RFA, they keep their contract with Bothell, and if Bothell says yes RFA, then Snow 10 contracts with the RFA, and then subsequently Snow 10 voters have the option to join the RFA, because that keeps it more.
It's possible. I mean, makes more sense. The real problem would be is if Bothell said no, and Snow 10 said yes for them, because we would and then we would say, okay, Snow 10, you want in, okay. How do we serve those areas? Well, okay, Bothell will pay you to run those calls. I'm not sure but it's way better if everybody's aligned at the same time, which is why I'm pushing for both of them to put it on the November ballot. And I understand what you're saying, and we can do an ILA too to bridge gaps and so forth. I would prefer for them to go in November, but they may decide that it's cleaner if we wait for Bothell to say yes or no. and then for us to put it on the ballot in April.
It just makes it so there's not a weird possible outcome. Of
Yeah,
awful snow and snow tents is yes, the other thing to consider is. I think the tax rates are different in snow tent than they are in Bothell.
oh yeah, they are. And that's it, that's in this analysis too. They also save money. Not as much as we do, but they save money. So it's good for them too. And I have not done a single family, I've done an average impact for them, not a single family, multi and commercial. Because I don't have in fact, I just forwarded it to him today, the contract with Neil Blindheim, he's our fire benefit charge SME. He's gonna do the fire benefit charge for snow tent too, which shouldn't take very long because it's not nearly as much work. Yeah. And I think he's got all the data, he just needs to plug it in, and then he can tell me, oh, and by the way, the impacts that I talked about with single, multi, and commercial is not exact. I took 28 varying sizes, varying value, single family residences from around Bothell. And I did the same for commercial and multifamily, and then I equated that to an equivalent levy rate. It is not all of them. I did not do all of them. I was just trying to get an idea of what the impacts are. And there's fluctuations even within single family residences throughout because of different values and size of structures.
So you need, we need to have a meeting with the council, is that?
So all this said, I've now framed, thank you for bringing us all the way back around. Thank you. We need, these are questions, these are the positions that I believe we should be taking, but this is a board decision, and this is a council, some of these are council decisions too. And so I will say on the governance piece, I think there was some misunderstanding, and I have clarified that pretty directly. They don't, let me be very, very clear. They do not, the council does not, and the voters, because there was some kind of assumption that maybe the voters get to have a say in this. The voters and the city council do not have a say in how this governing board is structured. If you look at our governing board documents, you have the authority and power to adjust the structure however you want by a majority. Now you can take input from, say, the council, and let's say they came back and were like, oh, we're good with one, or we want 5, or we want all 7 of our council members on there. It is entirely up to this board to decide what that looks like. I just want to be clear because there was some misunderstanding, I think at some point, not here, there. Now you can, again, to be good partners, you can listen and you can take that input and then you can make a decision, but ultimately that's what they absorb into. So back to your point too, it would be good for us to, flush out some of these things. I've given you the positions that I think that is reasonable for this board, but they may say, we're not going to give you any reserve money.
Well, I feel like as an agenda for the meeting, I mean, all these points could be discussion points for that meeting.
That's what I'm planning on. Kyle has this too, and Quan, and I've shared it with them. And as we've updated it now and then, I've given them updated versions. Again, if you guys are good with the May 14th date, then I will work up an agenda. I would agree with you. I think a lot of this is going to be relationship building, meet and greet stuff, but we also need to get in to at least some of these key financial decisions. Some of these are easier than others, but
where would we meet?
well, that's a good question. I threw out 51, but that's not a really big room for 17 governing board members and any public that shows up. So now I'm thinking maybe the council chambers in Bothell, it's bigger. And have that, and they're wired up better for remote attendance. If you, again, I'm not saying you have to do it, it's just it could be here, we could accommodate enough people here too.
I think their council chambers are better set up.
Their council chambers are set up better, but
So
because everything's wired in, it's not temporary stuff, it's all wired in.
so we have to say that it's a special meeting so we could meet there, okay?
Especially if you're, and again, I think the preference is the full board, or however many of you guys can make it. It's gonna definitely be a quorum for here. It's definitely, if they do the full council, it's definitely a quorum there. The only way we get away from that is for them to do 3 and us to do 5 or less.
But I think the more the better.
But I think the more,
Because they'll see that we're totally interested, ready to buy into it. So
Yeah, and on that note, following that meeting, Kyle and I have talked and I have told him. Again, this is, I said, I don't speak for the board. I said, Kyle, if I don't have a decision to put it on the November ballot. Yeah, it'll be my recommendation to my board that we look at either severing or significantly changing our relationship by 2027. So, so the plan or the tentative plan pending your guys' input here on the May 14th date would be the following meeting or two at the city council level to finalize that and pass assuming we have a package that I need to modify our governing board documents depending on whatever is decided, that the council makes a decision to put it on the ballot. And that decision is by early to mid-June at the latest. I have to give notice by the end of June if we're going to sever on the 27th, unless they give us some flexibility of not giving 6 months notice. We have to give 6 months notice.
What's driving that urgency?
6 month notice.
No, the time frame of why do you, if they don't have a decision, why do you wanna?
Because I need to give 6 months notice by end of June if we're going to be out in 27. I think it's very, very likely that we're going to go in November, but I do want to we need to have that conversation and or a board decision on that and direction to me.
But I guess if it's moving towards something that's potentially successful, but it slows down and isn't ready for November, why not give it the time it needs to succeed?
Chief, can I jump in here real quick?
Go ahead, Josh.
Hey, I'm with Commissioner Admin here. I think, if they're moving in a positive direction and we are unable to get it filed in time for the November election, it doesn't really matter if it happens in November because we won't have taxing authority until 2028, correct?
Correct, but I need to give you some more information on that too.
Okay, so I just also a little context around that taxing issue is that city governments are statutorily required to reduce their level of taxation by whatever level of taxation the RFA is going to implement. That is true until I think mid-year of 2026, maybe start of 2027. My understanding is that is going to change with the new legislation that is going to allow Seattle to become its own RFA. The single city RFA plan allows RFAs to tax and for cities to maintain their own level of taxation. So it's a little nuance there on the timing.
Right. Was that it, Josh?
Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
So, and both of you guys have good points. I mean, we could look at this as like, this is still a really good thing for us to have happen, regardless of whether it's November or not. So again, it would be my recommendation to you. However, by the end of this year, it'll be 2.5 years of us running Bothell. It'll be 4 years of them not having a permanent fire chief. There is a lot of angst, not only here, but even more so there. We need to be moving forward. Now, with that said, I don't want to rush forward and do something stupid. I don't want to alienate things, as much as we can, but we have plenty of time to make November work. The language needs to be to the county by August 4th. So if it doesn't happen, and to your point, and to Josh and Eric, if it doesn't happen in early to mid June and it goes longer than that, that's totally fine. If we are still committed to a November, ballot measure, and or if we have flexibility of not giving 6 months notice, if we want to say we're done in 27, there's a number of different things that might play with that, but our plan is to have everything done and ready by beginning or mid-June. And the council is gonna be communicated on, I don't know if he's communicated that yet, but Kyle's gonna talk to him about that timeline.
So you already gave them that deadline?
I've given them the deadlines that we have to have the language to the county.
I'm talking about the deadline of if you don't get this on the ballot by November, we're done.
I haven't given that to the council. I've talked with the city manager. I said, I don't get to make that decision. My board gets to make that decision. I said, but we need to be moving forward. This is not productive for anybody. I'm not doing as good a job as I need to be doing over there. It's taking away time from here.
But I guess from a personal standpoint, I feel like as long as we're making forward progress and everybody understands there's a plan for forward progress, I just wouldn't hinge the success or failure of it on an arbitrary
A
deadline.
date, yeah. I
Okay.
agree.
Oh, that's the board's decision. I mean, it's not my decision. I'm just telling you what, you know, this will have been 2.5 years of us doing this. And if they can't, I mean, I know, but I'm
happening.
well, I mean,
Well, maybe we gotta, add some admin staff if it doesn't, I mean, there's
Yeah.
things that have to happen.
no, and I'm not just talking,
But-
I'm actually not talking about me as much.
No,
as-
I got no problem. I think it's okay to try to strongly encourage this thing to wrap up.
We risk losing support if we don't have a commitment moving forward. That's what I meant by the 4 years.
Mhm.
It'll have been 4 years. Think about this, 4 years without a permanent fire chief.
Yeah, I understand.
How would you guys feel if we did not, if we were just had this interim, let's say the roles were reversed and you had me as a part-time guest, and the body, the firefighters and the admin staff, and you remember the RFA conversation?
I'll say it depends on if you're doing a good job or not, because North Shore lived through this. And we had a bunch of loner chiefs that were not really doing a good job. And so
I was doing an excellent job, right?
So that situation, it was okay because the situation got better. So I think as long as we're doing a good job of Bothell,
Okay,
it's
well,
okay.
thank you for resetting me on this a little bit.
Maybe that's
I still
something
want us to,
add to the conversation is how they feel about a November.
I think by the time,
Ballot.
if it is May 14th, by the time we get, whenever the meeting is, by the time we get to the meeting, I truly believe that Kyle, if he hasn't already, has talked about this timeline. And actually, I know that one-on-one, he's had this conversation because he shared with me his conversations on Monday morning, that he had one-on-ones with the council and they were all on board, and they were all on board for the November timeline. Because I was still talking about the potential of an August timeline, and they're like, August isn't gonna work, but they're all on board with a November timeline. That's almost quote unquote what he said. So they've had this conversation. Now, there are things that could interrupt that or change that for sure. And then we would have to go, why is it changed? Is it legitimate? Is it something, or is it just them? No, we want to wait for another 5 years. I think, there's a difference.
I think it's good to have it as a target, just not have it be an absolute. I think the only other consideration with regard to that deadline is I don't know what's gonna happen with their council, who's in those positions, if we have a certain group of council members who supports it right now, and then it goes into next year and they have different council members. I don't know if any of those positions are turning over
I don't think
next year.
so. I don't think that. That's a good question. I'm not positive. I don't think they have anybody.
That'd be the only downside I see
Yeah,
it.
I did meet with the 2 new ones, one-on-one. That just got seated at the beginning of this year. Yeah, that's a good question. One of the other reasons for this timeline too is, let's segue a little bit into the fight, because I think Josh or somebody was talking about, or you was talking about where our financial authority happens, which is true. It's January 1 of 2028. But I've been exploring options because this is the next item under new business too, is talking about our UTGO, our capital bond, and what that timing looks like. So why don't I put a pin in that one for a minute, and let's respectfully, are we good with the May 4th?
May 14th.
Oh, sorry, thank you, sorry, May 14th joint meeting, because if that's the case, I need to communicate that and start getting calendars set.
Yeah, give me an address and a time.
City, Bothell, City.
Have no
Hall.
idea where that is.
Okay,
Where the hell is
I will get you an address.
Thank you.
Right in downtown Boston.
It's in right here.
Oh,
5 o'clock.
So we're
well,
on another.
That's the next question is, their meetings typically, I think, start at 6. That might help with Josh's, that's really close to where Josh works, but for you guys to get over there, we can throw out whatever date or time.
I've always works, but if it's 6, it's. still
5 would be great.
five.
Josh,
So just see what works for people.
I'm happy with 6 o'clock. I could make 5 o'clock work, likely.
5:30. I don't, they may want to go 6 o'clock because that's their normal time too. I don't know if it really matters necessarily, but. How about anytime after 5, preferably 5:30 or later?
Just make sure it works for, I mean, I think we're flexible.
Okay, so. I will communicate that off. Any other questions about the RFA before I segue into our UTGO?
So I guess just to set up, well, I guess we'll have another meeting before then, so we can talk
Yeah,
about
we
that
will.
meeting.
Yeah, I thought about that too. So, and by then maybe I'll have an agenda or a draft agenda and stuff that we can talk about. So.
Does Bothell have a list of questions for us before this meeting that we could be prepared for?
Great question, Rick. They haven't yet. I've shown them our questions though, and I think that they think, well, the feedback I've got is, oh yeah, there's a lot of good questions. The only question I've heard is, how are we going to, how are the personalities and how is, this is a relationship building piece of it, is how are the boards and all that going to relate and all that. That's
It's gonna be fun.
But that's just relationship building. I mean, that's not really a tangible question necessarily. It's more of getting to know each other and relationship building.
Maybe in advance of the meeting, it would be a good idea.
If they do have any questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. I'll ask that too. Okay, any other questions about the RFA?
No.
Okay,
Let's move on,
thank you.
please. UTGO bond.
Okay, so, you all know that we have been talking about what we want to do with the new 62 construction. Our old UTGO that funded part of 63, the new ladder truck and some other stuff that sunsetted last year. So we have no UTGO in play right now. Unlimited tax general obligation bond. It's the bond that you're typically familiar with. It's the one that has a property tax assessment and is paid. It's a loan that's paid for by a property tax assessment, as opposed to an LTGO, limited tax general obligation bond, which is what sometimes termed a council-matic bond. We also have one of those currently right now to pay for the rest of 63, which is being paid for by impact fees because of the impacts of new development. Okay, I'm talking about a UTGO, a voter, and the difference is UTGO is voter approved, LTGO is commissioner approved. We have talked about a UTGO for 62. I've been waiting to figure out what's going on with Bothell. I put it in the analysis too of what a station construction would look like just for us, what it would look like for 2 stations across the whole RFA of that South Bothell station and a 62 together, and what it would look like standalone for both us on our own and Bothell on its own, because the timing on this becomes kind of problematic, especially if we go past November, to be honest. But one of the things I've asked Brian Snur to weigh in on is there a way, if we have a vote yes on the RFA of Bothell joining the RFA, even though we don't have full authority to January 1 of 2028, to have a bond approved that would impact all of those properties?
When does the RFA take effect?
That's the key question. So we can do, and I got to explore it. So understand, I'm giving you the freshest, I haven't even explored this. I just got this information. Cause I had an epiphany the other day of like, hey, is there a way that we could do this so that we don't have the negative impacts of delaying the RFA vote beyond August? Because if August was happening, we'd have the full authority January 1 of next year. Since it's a potentially a November election, that's not coming till 2028. What Brian told, again, I gotta explore this, so I'm just giving you the freshest information on this. I'm gonna put caveats to this, so I need to explore this. If we do the November election and and authorize the RFA for April 1st of next year, we still don't have county taxing authority until January 1 of 2028. However, he believes that we have bond taxing authority because it's after the establishment of the RFA, of Bothell joining the RFA. So we say March 1st, April 1st, the RFA is in play, even though we don't have the authority to change the county taxes because those have already rolled, for 27. We can do a bond, on the new RFA as long as it's after whatever that date is, March 1st, April 1st, whatever it is. And we can start the UTGO for the entire new RFA. That would be good for us. Well, it's good for all of us because it's a vote to approve something that will improve levels of service in Shoreline, Kenmore, and Bothell. Sorry about Lake Forest Park.
So just to kind of
Indirectly Lake Forest Park too.
really,
So it help him. It helps Lake Forest Park some indirectly, not as directly. Sorry, go ahead.
so just a really high level question about this before we're even talking about the bond. So, building 2 new stations is a big capital cost, but it's also going to be a big operating cost because we're going to have to up staff to support both those stations. So that's going to basically add to the expense of our whole model.
Yep.
And have we done is there a new level of service study or something that is driving this push towards the 2 new stations? Or
Yes. I mean, we have done our analysis for the 62 area, which I shared with y'all. Which it's actually not. I mean, we're kind of I'm glad you asked the question, and we're diving into kind of a little bit more specificity on this, but the need for I'm going to talk about 62 first. The need for 62 is not necessarily the calls in the 62 first due, because it's only about 600 to 800 calls without point wells, maybe a little bit more of calls in that area. It's not. I mean, yeah, that's probably busy enough for a station. But it's borderline.
Where's this located? Like 62?
Well, theoretically, it's right next. We'd be building it right on top of 62 now.
Down Richmond Beach.
Oh, sorry, Richmond Beach. Okay, northwest corner. We bought the property right next to the old volunteer fire station that's down there to give us the opportunity to build a new station there. The call volumes there are not super high. They're probably enough to warrant a new fire station. But it's calls that are coming off of 64's first due area, that's the biggest benefit. And it makes 64 more reliable as a fire station where it's at. If we don't do anything, in the northwest corner, as the city continues to grow, 64 becomes more and more unreliable. It becomes a bigger and bigger problem. Every year we lose performance out of that station, and it'll continue to degrade. It's just the aid car there is busy. The engine's busy too, but the engine's also now doing aid calls because the aid car is out of service. So now there's more factors in it than just this new station, because we have wall time issues and stuff like that, which we're trying to address. But I mean, that's a whole nother bigger topic. But that station down at 62, we have longer response times into the Richmond Beach area. They're not super long, but they're longer, and they're the longest in our outside of the Highlands. Outside of the Highlands, that's our longest response times because we have to deal with gates to get in there. But I mean, it's our longer response times, and it's 600, 800, 900 calls a year that comes off 64's book, which helps 64. Okay. And we've got analysis on all of that. I don't have a full analysis of, we're calling it 43, Station 43 in South Bothell. But we do know that there's about 1,500 calls. There's old studies. There are old studies that have been done, but nothing super, recent. There's about 1,500 calls in South Bothell, south of the slough, that are impacting Station 42. Station 42 is the one downtown. It's the downtown station. Station 42 is a fairly busy station. It's doing 5,000 plus calls a year. The A car is running most of the time. The engine, it's a busy station. And it's the same situation that we have, except it's on steroids. It's the same situation between that we have at 62 or 64 that we have at 42. Stations that are becoming unreliable, and even more so as growth continues. And 42 has impacts because there's new growth that's going on in downtown Bothell. There's a big multifamily on the other side of 405, 320 units there, 280 units just north of City Hall. There's another big one that's partway through construction in downtown. There's another one over by McMinimans. 42 will continue to become even more unreliable. It's a big problem. It has to be addressed. It was identified 30 years ago. It's been proposed to the city 5 times. It's part of the public safety levy, or that was identified in that public safety levy that they need to improve the response times in that area. So the situation we have in northwest corner of Shoreline is the same in South Bothell. It's the same we have in South Kenmore, except not nearly as bad, because that's only about 500 calls a year. You still with me? Okay. We have done a station up because it was our work. We did a station analysis, at which the North Shore Commissioner saw of the 54 impacts, the response times and reliability and all that. We have some of that data. So to answer your question, I think we've done definitely some good due diligence on the impacts in the northwest corner of Shoreline and the south end of Kenmore. Not so much, well, it's been done, but it's very old, it's antiquated, it needs to be refreshed. For South Bothell, we need to do a station location analysis in South Bothell too, to figure out where the right location is too. That would all be done, assuming that we're moving forward, with the capital bond.
I guess I feel like, so generally I'm supportive of what you're talking about. But I think if we just look at the, cents per thousand that we're charging.
6.5 cents. It'd be about 6.5 cents.
Okay. But if we just look at that and then we say, okay, what's it gonna take to staff and operate?
Okay, yeah.
It's built, there's gonna be a total cost of the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
So I think we ought to just have a good sense of what is the total cost of the whole thing gonna be moving forward, what's the model gonna look like before I think we just need to make sure that we're, making the correct decision.
Yeah, no, I totally, I hear you, but well, 2 things. The first is that Bothell's, that third-party financial consulting group that I was talking about earlier, they have factored in increased costs for the South Bothell station. If they were to do it on their own. Second thing is, I understand and I have a concern about the financial impacts, but for me, it's the level of service. We need to afford it, but we need to do this. So we need to do this from a level of service, operational performance position. And we have, if you gave me $24.5 million, well, actually it's only 19.5 million for our station, $19.5 million for our new station, down in Richmond Beach. Today, I'm still 3 years out. I'm moving it into those impacts that you're talking about. Now, would we want to gear up on our staffing levels before we were opening the doors? Probably, yes, so that we don't have a need to hire a bunch of people, for that station. I believe the station 62 model would probably be a jump crew, engine and 8. So 3 people assigned. So that's roughly about 14 FTEs ish. So it's an impact. That's a couple $1 million, of plus the facility costs, so annually. So yeah, it's an impact. It's also years out. So we can, if we're committed to this, we can gear up for it. But it is, for me, it's about level of service until we can't afford that level of service. And if we're doing this RFA, our property tax rate drops by over 30%. we will be able to afford this building back in if we need to do that. The impact fees or not impact fees, but the impacts to the cost of Station 43 in South Bothell are more. Because if it is 2,000 calls, we may initially, to your point, looking at long term, we may initially staff it with a jump crew, engine and aid, but with 2,000 calls, it probably warrants both an engine and an aid out of there, which is even more money. Jack it up by another, 500,000, 600, 700,000.
Plus the equipment, we have to put it there too.
Plus the equipment. So one of the things that I've thought about, and this is why we're discussing this too, I'm not asking for a decision tonight. Let me be clear. I'm starting the conversation so that you guys can think about it and then ask any additional questions as they come available. With the time it takes to build new fire engines, I think we probably should put 2 fire engines onto this too. Because by the time these stations are, I'm going to say this, and I can't believe I'm saying this because if you go back a ways, you would never say this. By the time we can build a fire station is about the same time that you could build a fire engine. So if we're really thinking about this, we should be buying 2 fire engines with this bond as well, and rolling it all into that one cost.
What about 8 cars?
Well, and we do an 8 car too.
Both of them?
We have
I know, but we still have to purchase.
8 cars take less time to buy, but we could roll that into the capital bond too. It is, let me be clear, it's about 6.5 cents per thousand for the full RFA with both stations, with assuming that we do an LTGO to buy or build part of 62, because that's what we do with 63, and that sunsets at the end of next year. My plan will be to replace that LTGO with a new LTGO and use impact fees to pay for that new one, because you can justify it for the new station to mitigate the impacts of new development.
Right.
Okay, so we don't have to absorb, it's $19.5 million to build the station. We don't have to absorb $19.5 million fully in a UTGO. Maybe half that, or I don't know, whatever it is. I've got the spreadsheet on. I did some assumptions and played with some of the numbers. And I even plugged it in and I said, what's it going to cost to do a $50 million bond on 10 years and at a current rate? What's our current rate? And they said, they spit out a number, and that's how I equated it to 6.5 cents per thousand. In today's dollars, without AV growth and without interest, today's dollars, 6.5 cents. 14 cents if Bothell does it on their own. Because then it's smaller AV and all the cost of that station falls on the thing. Again, if we do it all together, it sells to almost all of our cities, even indirectly Lake Forest Park, because it would help them too. But the impacts to the level of service impacts to Shoreline, Bothell, Kenmore are good. And we need to do it. I understand, and you have a very valid point. We need to be considering what the long-term financial impacts are operational, not just the bond, but operation. But this is something I believe we have to do. Now you can tell me no, that we can't afford it, but I'm arguing that we can afford it and that we need to afford it because we need to be addressing these long-term operational impacts and performance.
62's been a long time coming.
Yeah,
It should have been done a long time ago, in my opinion.
possibly, yeah, probably.
So it has to go, the bonds have to go to the voters?
If we do a UTGO, yes.
Yeah.
When we do the LTGO, sometime like say late next year or early 28, that's just a board decision.
Board decision.
And then I would roll the impact fees that we collect into, I do new forecasts of the impact fees that we're going to collect over the next 10 years to try and figure out how big of a bond that we would want to afford, because if the impact fees don't pay for it, then it comes out of our operating budget. That's the difference between a UTGO and an LTGO. UTGO is paid for by property tax assessment. LTGO is paid for out of our operating budget or our annual budgets, or in this case, our impact fees.
And does Bothell have impact fees?
They do, but they might as well not. They have impact fees. They're woefully
Okay, so
low.
will that,
I am lobbying for them to, I've been actively lobbying for them to reassess that.
okay. And North Shore doesn't have any?
No, and impact fees have to be spent. So to be
They have
To be
spent
clear,
in their city. Yeah.
the impact fees we collect here in Shoreline have to be spent in Shoreline. So
And
even
for
if we did an
specific things.
LTGO, we'd have to do two LTGOs if we were to get, if we're going to do the same model in Bothell, if all of a sudden they, hey, we're gonna charge $1,500 per unit or, whatever. Instead of 130. They would need to do a separate LTGO than ours because the impact fees collected would have to go to those areas. Okay. So my ask here today is it's not a decision, but is to think about what we're talking about here. If you have any other additional questions, and I can do some long-term forecasting for costs and all that. But I believe this is not really an option for us unless you talk me off the ledge and somehow convince me. But in my opinion, this is something that we have to do from a level of service standpoint. And as a reminder, we are at least from today, we're 3 years out. So think about what's going to happen in the next 3 years too.
So like I said, I'm generally supportive. It's just now, in particular, my experience of being on the city council is that I'm also seeing things from that lens, and they're looking at affordability for people who live in the different communities. And the fire department, we're fortunate that we have the means to collect money that we need to operate our budget. Cities don't always have that, and
no, especially when sales tax are coming in way under.
And there's a forecast now that sewer rates from Metro are going to go up by double digits for the next like 10 years to pay for some new infrastructure for regulatory stuff. So we just have to really, again, I'm supportive. I just want to make sure that we look at the total financial impact to the community.
Yeah, and I agree, and I try to be sensitive to that. I mean, I remember David giving me a hard time about all I do is spend money, early on in my time here, but that was because we only had like 250,000 in our capital fund and a 21-year-old ladder truck. I had to spend money, and our staffing was 10 people, per shift. I was like, I had to address. So I spent a lot of money up front, but I'm very proud of what we've been able to accomplish over like the last 8 to 10 years, especially as we've been able to your point, be able to continue to find efficiencies and drive down our equivalent levy rate. This Bothell RFA will really, really provide a lot of relief for our taxpayers. It's 30%, over 30%, at least as it stands now. So I think we will be able to show very good stewardship, at least not, maybe Bothell won't, they're not going to see that kind of savings, but the rest of the RFA will. And I think we can, show our due diligence in trying to find affordability now. I'm not trying to spend money just willy-nilly, but I have an obligation to focus on levels of service, make sure our guys have good training, good equipment, good apparatus, good facilities, a good CBA so that they're not leaving, things like that. I feel very good about being able to defend those, but I also don't want to start doing gold inlays and granite countertops. I mean, we need to be good stewards of the money, because if we don't, they will flip on us and we won't get support, and we won't be doing our job as being good public servants to our taxpayers. So I always try to balance those. Sometimes I'm good and sometimes I miss, but I'm just trying to share with you a little bit of my financial mantra, culture, philosophy. Okay, so
Things to consider.
so
yes.
I've got a few things that I can work with and bring you back some more information, and then by the time we're moving forward or potentially move forward with this, we'll probably know a little bit more, and I can clarify the legal options that are available to us for the bond. Okay, sorry. I told you this wasn't going to go fast, super fast. This will go super fast.
Next
This will go.
is post-medical or post-employment medical benefit retirement dates.
Okay.
Chief.
So one of the things that came up recently, there was a grievance that we received, and it made me take a look at regarding moving a retirement date for anybody that's on post-employment medical benefits program. The resolution allows me to move people's retirement dates. It's a fire chief discretion on a case-by-case basis, but what I failed to do, I have to come to the board and make sure that you guys understand what I'm doing. It's in the resolution. I missed it. And so I need to come to you and get authorization for moving anybody's retirement dates beyond June 30th. I have 3 people that have requested a change next year to their retirement dates to be later than June 30th. It has no because of the changes that we've made in the CBA, it has no financial impacts to us. In fact, there might be some benefits to us to have those people stay longer. So I'm in support of it, but I need you guys to be okay with it. They want to, I think most of them want to move to the very end of next year. So from June 30th to like December 30th or 31st or something like that. And I'm happy that they want to stay longer, to be honest. So,
Want a consensus of vote?
yeah, I don't have a motion or I just need you guys, in case you have any concerns, to voice it. If not, then I'm just gonna.
No downside.
Yeah, I just need to come to you guys and make sure that you are informed about what I'm doing.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That was it.
Does anybody there in virtual have any
Any
questions or concerns? Okay,
No downside.
go for it.
Yeah.
All right,
It's
Moving
it's a
on.
byproduct of the change in the CBA language because now it doesn't have an impact. So it's
the
good.
last agenda item is projected agendas. May 7th, Commissioner Admin will not be in attendance. Correct?
Correct.
No Zoom or anything?
Have a conflicting.
Okay, no problem, just double checking. And Commissioner Byers will either be virtual or excused absence.
21st.
Oh, 7th, I'm on the 7th yet. May 4th, possible meeting with Bothell, 21st,
May 14th.
or
You
May
did what I
14th,
did.
exactly. Too many dates here.
I know.
May 21st, Commissioner Byers will be virtual or excused. And then that brings us down to June 4th. We need to change some dates. We will not have a quorum on June 4th.
Do we need a meeting or can we?
Yeah, it's been proposed to move June 4th to the 11th and then the next following meeting to the 25th. And then we started looking at July. And our first meeting is right about 4th of July weekend where people take off and go camping and celebrate. So we proposed that possibly moving July 9th, moving to July 9th and then moving the next date to July 23rd, and that would leave the gap for August.
No works.
Works?
That's cool.
So you're saying June 4th to the 11th and the.
So we're gonna just rotate
Okay.
2 months.
Yeah,
And the 11th to the
And then-
25th, and then July 9th and 23rd.
Instead of first and third and second and fourth.
Are you-
Rotate.
June 4th to the 11th, June 18th to the 25th, July 2nd to the 9th, July 16th to the 23rd.
And you'll send out the invites and change our calendars, that'll work good.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, at least it was noticed.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Works out good
Okay.
for me.
okay.
Oh, what we got?
Maybe 4th of July, no.
Rick, Nye, are you okay with that? Did you hear all the changes? Beatrice will send out.
Yeah, there'll be
Notice.
Did.
new invites.
Okay. All right, and then we have, of course, Lake Chelan, the 4th through the 7th, pancake breakfast on June 13th. And that's it.
June 13th.
Does anybody have anything to add?
That's it, dinner. Dinner time.
Thanks for all your patience. I know I talked quite a bit tonight, but I really wanted to make sure that you guys had as much information as possible.
No, that's fine.
7:08, adjourned.
Thank you.
Good question.
Hey, chief. I like the